Hello people, time to scrap some stuff. I found a couple of things while dumpster diving. I think I even have this one on video. That one I found somewhere else, and one of these I found, and the other I got from someone. Here, this doesn't work. You go see what to do with it. And this thing I also found dumpster diving. I'm not sure if I have that on video, but if I make a new dumpster diving video, I'm going to go through all the footage and make another compilation. I'm going to take all this stuff apart, and we'll go over what comes out in some more detail. I won't go over the whole disassembling in detail. I'll probably speed that up a lot, but let's first get all my tools set up here, because, well, as you can see, no tools. So I can never do that. How about this? Ah, there we go. Right. Where shall we start? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Let's just take this one. Cheapy Silvercrest sound system. It's like a CD player, alarm clock, radio, whatchamacallit. Now this is basically Yoko level equipment, probably slightly better, because, well, if anyone remembers Yoko, that stuff was, well, bad. Someone put their cigarette on here and went to sleep. Safety and stuff. Oh, look at that. There's still a disc in here. Greatest hits of 2010. Might even be something interesting on there. Well, no, kids. Probably not. Aha, interesting circuit boards and stuff. Time to snip off some stuff. And we're free. I'll take this thing apart at a later time. I'm just gonna throw this in with my pile of copper bearing motors for now. And there is the main power cable. I'll get these brass pins out later. Antenna, more wire, and one of those ferrite rings again. Wow, magnets and stuff. More wire. Well, not much interesting on here. This is all very old radio stuff. This is a coil, but it's completely, well, plastered in. Not sure if I'm able to get this copper out. I will try that in detail later. And I will just toss it in with my copper spools and motors for now. Some tiny spools here that I will get off. There's not much on here. Some of these screws might look brass, a little brassy, so maybe I'll get that off, but this is low grade, so yeah. I'll get this piece of plastic off as well. Now, this might be handy. I am sometimes fiddling with electronics and stuff, and if something needs a 9-volt battery pack, one of these connectors might be handy. You can just strip the ends and solder it in place where you need it, and then I can use this. So I'm keeping this. All right, top part. There, another nice low-grade board. These green things might be capacitors, I think. And they might have silver in them. Oh, there's one. These are usually called MOSFETs. They're like a type of transistor. And the plate in here is usually copper. It's like probably tin plated copper. So can get those out. Just melt this with the whole pile of MOSFETs that I have right now. And that's about the only thing that I actually can use. So again, I'll take these plastic things off and toss this in with low grade. So this is the CD drive part. Nice rainbow here. Skittles cable. And another one of those. Oh, there we go. Flat cables. Now sometimes, in this case, it's not gold plated, but sometimes these are gold plated pins. This is a very crappy piece of equipment, so didn't expect anything interesting in there. But keep a lookout for stuff like that. This is where you click on the CD. I still have it here. This is quite interesting. Oh. So there's like little ball bearings in there and tiny springs, and if you click the CD on, they go inward and outward, and they keep the CD in place. People who own or still own or have owned the PlayStation 1, the first one, the gray box basically, that it had the same mechanism. Now what happened to mine is these balls or these springs broke off at some point. So mine has only one spot left where it still clicks, but I have seen many PlayStation 1s where all three were broken and then the CD doesn't stick on the thing anymore and you can't play any CDs anymore. So I'm going to be keeping this and gonna see if I can replace, because this is just only something that goes on the rotor. This can probably just be taken off. I'm going to be careful with this stuff now. I'm going to go and see if I can install this bit in my PlayStation 1 so that it will hold the CDs better. So that's one good item out of this whole lot. Again, these motors have copper in them, so I'm going to take these off and put them in with my copper bearing motors. And the rest isn't that interesting. Just some tiny circuit boards and wires, and the rest is scrap iron. So putting this aside for now, just get all the screws out that I can see. There we go. Tiny circuit board in there, probably for tactile switches for this button. I'll take that out later. The rest is basically plastic. Right, so lots of wires here, probably for the LCD screen and whatever. Any screws in here? Yes. Oh, and there's your problem right there. This looks somewhat burned. Keep bending this until it breaks. There we go. And that will be some type of wire. low-grade board. I'm gonna take these LEDs off later. There's not much else on here that's interesting. IC chip, but yeah, these things, little transistors, might have golden bonding wires in them. But like I said, I just take the boards for low-grade value. Indeed, 2 tactile switches. I'll leave that part. I'll leave this piece in. This is just plastic. So let me pile up what came out of this. Alright, the end result of this device. There's a lot of stuff that I got out. I got this bit. There's I think it's like a part of like a motor. I tried to get these brass bits off. I got one tiny little nut, so that's not really worth mentioning. I got some of these contact pins out. These are silver plated, so there's a tiny blob of silver in there. Maybe it's better to see in the shade. Well, take my word for it. This LCD I took out, and the other LCD, which is kind of like LEDs. I think these might be golden tracings on here, and there might be some golden bonding wires in there, the same as are in LEDs. Got a tiny bit of copper coils. I even got the copper spool that was around the laser eye lens thingy, and I got the 2 neodymium magnets out. That's always fun. And the piece of glass for what's that called? The refraction of the light from the laser. I got 2 of the ferrite coils, one of these things that has a tiny bit of copper in there. Like I said, this thing that I will probably reuse. I got this copper bearing motor basically, and the biggest thing is the main transformer, but I think all these wires in here are insulated, so I'm probably not gonna bother taking this thing apart. Same as these, I'll just toss these in with copper bearing motors. I did get this thing off, so I'm gonna take this home and see if I can use this to fix my PlayStation 1. A couple of these rubber shock absorbers, a tiny bit of iron. There's also some screws which I put in the pot. And yeah, a pile of low-grade boards that have very little stuff on there that's interesting to me at least. And you can basically see where the thing broke, because that's all burnt. So the pile of wires that came out, and the main power cable. And a whole of a lot of plastic. And the CD, but yeah, that's basically plastic. So, my advice, if you come across one of these, snip the cord. This is the most interesting part. The rest, not so much. You can maybe try to get the brass pins from the power plug. Those are quite easy to take off, but other than that, when you come across one of these crappy things, snip the cord, take the cord and leave all the rest, because this wasn't worth it. This was about like, I don't know, half an hour, 35 minutes of work. So, on to the next thing. Alright, next item. Let's see. Right, so scrap iron or steel. A lot of hollow space in here. time for snip snip. Main power cable. There we go. Small low-grade board, nothing interesting on here for me. It has one crystal here and 2 ICs, but yeah. Ribbon cables. Now that's a big CD player. Huge chunk of plastic. I'll get this stuff out in detail later. Interesting looking LEDs. Don't think I've seen this shape before. It's probably same deal. Tiny gold bonding wire in there. Some more of these LEDs. Tactile switches. And a ribbon cable. Plastic. Aha. So how does this connect here? Screw in the pot. Aha. Right. Wire. So what's on here? Not that much interesting. These are nice. I'm gonna get these off. And this looks like stainless steel instead of aluminium. Yep. Very magnetic, so very iron. There are a few of these tripod thingies, and this here, probably more of those MOSFETs. They have copper plating in them. So take those out. I'm gonna take this apart in detail later. But that's one big, very low grade board. Oh, some ICs on the back, but still low grade. Now this looks a lot more interesting, mainly due to the fact that it is a big piece of extruded aluminum. Metal fatigue. Guess not. Let's help that process a bit. There we go. So, a stereo amplifier. Not really sure what's in one of those. I'm guessing there might be some more golden bonding wires and stuff in there. And another one on the floor. Now these don't look aluminium. Well, I guess they are. I think this is sheet aluminium and this is extruded aluminium. I usually keep those separate, but yeah, they're attached, so I'm just gonna toss them into one bucket. There we go. And I'm assuming that this is also a aluminium plate on the back. Now, to get this stuff off here, because it's a mess, you just have to lick. Well, no, let's not. That's somewhat poisonous. I'll clean that up later. Just let that, set that aside here. Look at the amount of screws in there. There. Screw, 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 screw. A lot of screwing around in this thing. And go. Now that that's out of the way, this is interesting. This has a big plate of copper all the way around, and if I can get the steel plating off, a couple of I think weld points on there, probably get in between with like a chisel or something. UK. Was that 9748? Probably not a date, but yeah, interesting that this circuit board is attached. Or you're just gonna cut this off and take this thing apart later. And there we go. More sheet iron or steel, whatchamacallit. Right. More low grade. Nothing interesting on here. Ooh, gold. Well, no, brass of course, but yes, give me. Copper bearing motor. I will take this brass off. If I can get that off actually. Let's see if this will. This might take a bit of work. Check that out later. Oh, this is the tape deck, of course. Yes. Come on. So yeah, this is all mechanical stuff. A lot of screws and plastic cogwheels, and might be a magnet in there. Doesn't look that interesting. This can go into the shred pile of plastic and metal combined. Another button and LED board. I'm getting quite a lot of these boards with these tactile switches. Maybe I should get these off and get a pot full of them. More low grade stuff. There we go, the main display. Looks awesome. A lot of tactile switches again. Some LEDs. This is plastic. Not that much on here. More low grade stuff. One nice chippy. And this is basically plastic. This is part of the main volume thing. Try to get that off. So yeah, that was this thing. Let me pile everything up so we can see what we got out of this thing. So after about 45 minutes of micro scrapping the hell out of this thing, it's all taken apart now. So let's have a look here. I got the main transformer here, which I will still be taking apart another time. Got quite a few of these copper bearing motors. This still has like a circuit board on it, but it's a tiny thing, so I'm going to leave that on. I might take these apart as well for the copper. And then there was this big thing. I actually got the cap off, and I thought the plate might have been copper, but I scratched at it and it appeared to be aluminium. So I thought, let's just wedge the thing off. And inside was this. Now, I think the big square blocks might be silver plated, and the wires going there might be silver. So I'm not sure. I am going to keep this for now. If any of the scrappers who have been doing this a lot longer and do a lot more scrapping than I do know if there's any silver in here or anything other interesting stuff, then please let me know in the comments. Like I said, I'm going to keep this for now. Just I have a few of these by now, so might be interesting. There was quite a few of those relays and switches in there, which all have the tiny either gold plated or maybe silver plated stuff. And some of these are brass, and most of them are copper, tiny copper plates. So I took them all off. I'm going to keep them all for refining purposes. Got a nice piece of brass from one of the motors. This is I think maybe even the laser module, and I couldn't get everything out, but this is like a brass housing for it, I think. So another piece of brass. When melting this, the whole lot on the inside will probably either melt or float to the top. Some tiny pieces of copper. These are the spools that were alongside them. Where is it? Did I keep it? No, alongside the lens. And these were spools that were on the main board. Got a few fuses that are handy to keep around. Got a couple of these MOSFETs and one bigger one. And these switches, these are cast aluminium, well, basically the housing of these knobs, but these look very much gold plated. Now again, if anyone has any experience with stuff like this, let me know if this is indeed gold plating. I will keep them and just toss them in with my gold refining stuff. So I will see about that later. Anyway, I was actually able to get the sheet aluminium off the extruded aluminium. It's just a matter of gripping it and pulling it off. So that came off. And that's basically the aluminium. Got some cables. Most of them are these flat cables, the ribbon cables. Some of these rubber bands, like I said, might be handy, but the main cable is always the interesting part. And yeah, that's about everything that's interesting in this thing. For me, it's mainly the extruded and the sheet aluminium and some of the copper. This ball was in one of the relays that I had to unwind. There was a spool in there, and it had some of the switches. But this is a nice little bundle of copper. So I'm happy with that. And then there was quite a bit of circuit boards. It's just about all low grade. This one might qualify as mid grade because it has some nice chips on there and a crystal and quite some MLCCs. Or tantalum capacitors maybe. I keep forgetting, are these things MLCCs or tantalum capacitors? I'm not sure. But this might actually be close to mid-grade, but it's basically all going in the low grade anyway. I'm still not sure if my scrapyard makes any difference between different grades of circuit boards. Hell of a lot of plastic and some of the sheet metal, the base plate and the cover, and then this is the tape deck that came out, and I'm not going to be getting all these plastic cogs and whatever out of there. I'm just gonna toss that in with the scrap. So yeah, when you get one of those items, don't go too much into detail. Get out big chunk of aluminium, get out the big transformer, and cut the cable, and that's basically it. And yeah, I'm happy with tiny bits of brass and copper for melting purposes. But if you're doing this for the money, just go for the easy stuff: the cable, the aluminium, and the main transformer. Let's do the other one. This one is quite a bit heavier than the other one, so I'm kind of guessing there's more interesting stuff in here. Bigger transformer probably, some more circuit boards, probably more heat sinks and stuff. We'll see. It's the same basic system, I guess. I think this was a Sony, judging by what's left of the logo. Well, I was right. Bigger heatsink. Quite a lot bigger actually. Something I can melt. Plastic. There we go. These usually just break off. Plastic anyway. Yes, all kinds of people running around. There, that's loose. I'll look at that later. Again, quite a lot of empty space in there. There we go. But indeed, a bigger transformer and a very large heatsink. And a slightly nicer looking circuit board. Still gonna be low grade, I'm assuming. But yeah, it's same basics. Let's see if we can get everything out here. Look at that. That's a big chunk of transformer. It's almost twice the size of the one that came out of the other one. Well, maybe not. Well, it's quite a lot bigger. And this has actually, can you see here? This has actually copper wire in it. So getting this thing apart might actually be interesting. Put that aside for later. That's basically the biggest piece of weight in this thing. There we go. Main power cable, and same deal for these. These are brass. I'm gonna take these off. I think I might be able to fill a crucible with just these pins at some point because I have a lot. Any more? Ah. There we go. I think this is main amplifier. This is a similar thing as I got from the other one. So I'm gonna see what's in there. Nice big of extruded aluminium and sheet aluminium that's on top of that. Take this off, and I think these might be the relay things that have like copper windings in them, and some couple spools in there that I'm going to take off. This is already a lot more interesting than the previous one. Not sure what these things are. I think might be a sort of capacitor. Can't really tell what they say. And one more of those disc capacitors that might have like silver in them. I'm just collecting these and putting them in a bucket, and when I get a whole of a lot, I'm gonna see how the refining of one of those things work, and if it's interesting enough to do myself, and if not, then I might try and find someone who wants to buy them for, I don't know, a couple bucks. So yeah, let's put this aside for now and continue on with the rest here. Now, how is this connected to the rest here? Is it screwed on or clicky on or what? Oh, I guess it was a clicky something. So yeah, this is plastic. It has a sheet of iron or steel here. I might be able to get that off, but it comes with a lot of free dust, so yeah, that's always useful. Get you some asthma going. Right. Away. This thing is still hanging here. Wait. Good thing my tools didn't go to the ground. And there we go. Right, this is a interesting looking board. I like the dark color they gave it, and the golden text makes it look all fancy, even though it's still low grade. A couple of IC chips, a lot of these transistors on here. These three-legged things might have golden bonding wires in there, crystal. Let's see, connectors, more ICs. Not that much interesting for me. This one, I'm gonna take this off and throw this in with the MOSFETs, because it probably has like a copper plate in there for cooling purposes, and a fuse that I think I might have quite a lot by now, but for some reason I keep them. It's just, there we go. So yeah, low grade. And another hell of a lot of screws. Alright, so we got another way too fancy display. A lot of tactile switches, which might have like silver in them. Some LEDs, good nice big LEDs. These have gold bonding wires in them. I'm gonna take those off. See what this is here. Can I take this off? There we go. Ribbon cable. Now I'm not sure if there's anything interesting in one of these. These tracings in here might be silver. Not sure. Oh, I'm breaking stuff. There's this iron plate that's fidgeting around. So yeah, Low grade. I'll look at this in detail later. There we go. Well, this is all plastic, so let's leave this with the trash. Let me pile up everything interesting that I can get out and show you the results of this one afterwards. Well, that was the whole thing. The main thing to be gotten out and being interesting is the big transformer and basically the power cable that's attached. The rest requires quite a bit of micro scrapping. Maybe the big extruded aluminium plaque heatsink could be interesting to someone, but other than that, it's all micro scrapping and tiny amounts and tiny bits and tiny pieces. But I'll show you what I got out of this one. And the deal is quite similar to the first stereo. Quite some motors because it's a disc changer, so it has all kinds of different motors in there. Also the cassette deck had some motors in there. There were some internal, those little blue boxes that had the spools in them. One came from no, these are two of those little blue boxes that had the spools in them, the little relay things. I think they were, and they also had some contact pins that are interesting. These were the two spools that were in the cassette deck that I just fumbled together. And there was a piece of brass, only piece of brass. Well, not the only piece of brass, but the only decent piece of brass that I could find in there. Some of these contact pins are brass. I don't know exactly why they choose to have one in brass and the other in copper. The contact points here might be silver plated. And I got another one of these. This is the amplifier part. I haven't gotten this one open yet, like I did with the other one, but I will try when I feel like it, when I'm into even more micro scrapping. And these like MOSFET items, one only of these, and a couple of spools, more copper, some tiny copper bits here, and one basically copper sticker. Now, in a couple of those relays were these things, and these are quite interesting because look at the size of this silver blob on there. Come on, focus. There we go. This is quite a nice blob. I'm hoping to find a lot more of these because then I can actually do some silver recovery. Got some LEDs out of there, some rubber bands that might be interesting. Got the brass from the power cord, some of these more shock absorbers, some tiny pieces of cast aluminium or cast alloy. Basically, probably it's aluminium. I got the sheet aluminium off the extruded aluminium. Basically all iron. There's some plastic cogwheels and stuff in there that I'm not going to be taking out, but that's just about all the iron that was in there, or the sheet plating. The rest was all plastic, which is all over here. So yeah, huge pile of plastic again. These were all the wires that came out, and yeah, the interesting one being the main power cable and some low-grade boards that don't have anything interesting left on them and didn't have much interesting on them to begin with, actually. So yeah, that was it for this stereo set, and yeah, let's continue with one of the small televisions. All right, let's get rid of these little televisions. Now I know there's some good copper in these usually, so at least I'll get I know I'm gonna get something to melt. So let's get this thing disassembled. This one is a Daewoo. I'm not really familiar with this brand. I know Daewoo used to make like cars. Didn't know they also did electronics. So let's get the screws out. There we go. Not so much in one of these small television. Tiny yoke. This is the good copper, and on the inside there should be some more. Let's get to snipping. Get all these wires off. I'll take this apart later. Small circuit board in here for the connectors. Take that out in a bit. Screws going everywhere. I'll sweep the floor again later. Tiny low grade board. This one is interesting. I'm getting this blue like M&M off here, because these might have like silver. Come on. There we go. Toss that in the big pot later. Not much interesting on here, just low grade. Aside. And there you have it, nice copper. Well, I'm going to whack this thing to pieces to get everything out. These inside pieces usually come out pretty decently. I have to like put a screwdriver in there. Do that later. And there we go. Degaussing cable I'll strip completely, and all these small cables I'll just snip off. Wire. No, that's about it. Now there's not that much interesting on here. I think the heat sinks are iron plates or steel plates. This one is. These transformers have copper windings in them. I'm gonna try to get those off. There's one of these really big MOSFETs in here that has copper in it. These are easy to take off. It's just unwrap. And other than that, not that much interesting on here. I'll get everything out and pile it up so you can see what comes out of this little Daewoo television. And after that, it's the Philips, and then we're basically done scrapping everything I have here for today. So that's the end of this tiny television. Got quite some stuff from here. Got small bundle of wires, the main power cables again being the most interesting, some low grade boards, and got some of this ferrite stuff. One is even magnetic, and some iron, and got the fuse because I like the fuses. There was even a small piece of extruded aluminium on one of the IC chips, which I took out. A couple of these MOSFET like chippies. Got one LED, and got the sensor. I think this is the remote control sensor. I'm not sure if there's anything interesting in one of these. If any scrappers have any information about this, please let me know. I'm guessing it functions slightly the same as like a LED, so there might be a golden bonding wire in there. If there's nothing in there, I'll just throw it out. Then there was this thing. I come across these a couple of times. I'm not sure, but these might be like silver plated or something. And there's basically this item where that is in between. And I think it functions as like a capacitor, but you're actually able to pull this little disc out. No idea what that is. So again, if anyone has any information about this, let me know. Right, so got some of these disc capacitors, the brass plugs from the power cord, got the tinned copper wire that's around the tube. I'm getting quite a bit of these now, so might gonna melt them in the near future. And there were quite some spools in there, so I got the easy spools I took apart and got some nice bundles and some smaller spools. This is the degaussing cable, because this is a small television, it doesn't come with like a huge one, but it's a nice nice bundle of copper. And this is the inside of the yoke, basically these two pieces, quite big and heavy. Now, this is still stuck on here. Maybe at the end of the video I'll get the yoke from the other television and this one and smash it to bits with a hammer. It might be fun. But yeah, that's basically what's in here. And there was very little actual plastic, except for the tube inside the plastic housing and the back plate. And I usually use these as like a small trash can. I toss all my waste plastic and all the crap in there and then put the cap back on and just toss that in the trash, because I have a nice trash room underneath my flat, underneath my apartment building, where I can just dump whatever. So no hassle for me whatsoever. Let me clean this up and get the other small television. I'm assuming it's going to be basically the same deal, so I'll go through that one slightly faster. There, last one of the little TVs. This is the Philips one I found while dumpster diving in my apartment building. So let's see what we can get from this one. These are Torx. Great. There we go. There. Slightly more fancy than the last one. Well, this is a Philips, the other one was Daewoo. Start by snipping some cables. Same deal, low grade. Nicely colored wires here. Rainbow. Reminds me of Recycle Dude with his Kermit the Frog mask. Why are there so many songs about rainbows? And there we go. Low grade. Hardly anything on here, just connections they made. Just about everything is on this side. There's a spool, more spools. I think this might have a spool inside, we'll see. This is one of those same things that has that little disc in there. I will get this off. A couple of these MOSFET-like thingies. And I'll get this all disassembled and show you the pile at the end. Let's see what else we can get out. That's the degaussing cable. And this is plastic. Same. This one is nicely red colored and this is nice and purple. So yeah. And the main power cable. And the brass plugs. Right, I'll pile everything up and show you the results at the end. There, got that thing all disassembled and micro scrapped out. So this is somewhat the same deal. You got your main copper from the yoke. This one I had to twist around a bit to get out. The other came out pretty easy. This was the degaussing cable. Was a lot easier to strip because of the plastic housing around it instead of all the tape. Again, this thing left, which I will hammer to bits later. There was one spool on the main board that's all layered in plastic, which I'm not going to be bothering with. I'll just toss that in with copper bearing motors. Some iron bits that came loose, the main power cable, and not so much of internal wiring. Low-grade boards, only two of them, the one on the back of the tube and the main board. I got a few things off. The good thing about low-grade boards is if you pull some stuff off, it's not going to go any lower. Well, unless you take everything off, then it's going to be no grade. So I got quite some of these blue bits and a few yellow ones even. The tinned copper wire, some spools that I unraveled. We got some bundles of copper, and there was this copper plating around this thing which I took off. That was easy. The brass plugs from the power cable, even got a bit of the wiring out of the plug itself, another fuse. And there were two of these in one of those housings. It had a little one and a big one, and again a sensor and a LED. A couple of these MOSFETs and a couple more even, because these are actually more interesting. These have quite a big plate on them, and as you can see, this is a big plate of copper that has a layer of tin on them. So when either whacking these off with a hammer or incinerating them, all you are left with is some nice copper. And these are quite weighty for what they are. So it's quite a thick plate of copper in there. And as soon as you get quite a lot, then it becomes a lot more interesting. I don't have that many yet, but I think E-Waste Mike can like fill his bathtub with these things by now. So yeah, it all adds up at the end. My advice for these little televisions is go for it, and maybe not scrap everything out in detail like I do, but at least get the copper out, get the main power cable out. If you can get some of these and some easy spools, go for it. And you can basically put the thing back together, and they might even fit in your basic trash can, so you can get rid of them. So, but for bigger CRT televisions, that might be somewhat more difficult. I'm going to clean this up, and then let's ram some of these into tiny little pieces and see what we can get out of those. All right, hammer time again. Got my Mjolnir. There we go. These are the tools of creation. Just a simple claw hammer. This aside. Also got a slightly bigger hammer. And if those small ones are done, I got a few bigger ones too. These are from some really big CRTs that I did recently. Right, start with a small one.